miniatures. They're little single cellular organisms with flagellates that illuminate when agitated. So it's these incredible sort of displays of illumination in the ocean. And I've seen some biologists suggest that 90%, 95% of deep sea organisms have some bioluminescent capacity. So this has been a research kind of area of mine for some time, but from the perspective of an artist, right? So I sort of worked with this and did some different kind of sculptural installations and whatnot. This is an example of so those organisms being illuminated through the waves. Okay. So one thing about bioluminescence and about kind of the way I think about this subject is as a powerful metaphor. Or actually I should say a powerful series of metaphors that almost are kind of springboards that allow me to say, wow, that metaphor can really take me to potentially interesting places. So maybe that metaphor, this phenomenon, maybe it's like, having done the research, I think I have, that question is coming to mind. If I look at this in such a way, maybe I can get a really interesting kind of hypothesis about like how I could change art or make powerful art. So here are some of the metaphors as biologists talk about it. So the bioluminescence is evolutionary developed as a lure. So these deep sea fish use a little lure. Other fish try to eat it, thinking that it's just a small one, and then they're preyed upon. It's also misdirection. Some little squid or shrimp have this. Basically, it's like it's sort of like a ink from an octopus, but it's a bioluminescent smoke cloud that would confuse prey, so they can get away. Attraction. Here's where a lot of this is unknown, but scientists are trying to figure out their own hypotheses. There is communication in bioluminescence between organisms. So how is that happening with some sea fireflies? And lattice operation. I think Casey Dunn here. Has anyone taken that class, his biology? Yeah. I think one of the things that he really researches is siphonophores, which are these sort of crazy, categorically confused things, which are individual organisms, but also a colony that works together. So it's kind of in between the individual and the colony, and they can get 50 yards long or whatever. But part of that has to do with the bioluminescence. Maybe there's some communication. All right. So, so this light pen. Back to kind of the science part. So those are some of the metaphors that I've been sort of chasing, or that I kind of have in my gut. So I look at, all right, scientists have been able to identify the bioluminescent beings for some time, maybe since the 60s, 70s. So turns out because they've identified the genes process, they can introduce them into other organisms. So this is used as a beacon gene. So they just kind of put it into other organisms, and then they show up. So it's used as a beacon. So they say, oh, well, how about that? It showed up here. So we put it close to these genes, so these genes must be related to the formation of it here. Okay? They also use that in terms of looking for cancerous growths or tumors. They attach it and see some development of that because of this bioluminescent capability. All right, so in the 70s, they actually used that same technology of bioluminescence, the chemical part, as an assay or test in the Viking space probe. Because those chemicals, if in the presence of some carbon-based light, would illuminate. So that was one of the tests that they had in the space probe to see if there was any life forms out there. Would have illuminated. I don't think it did, and now it's sort of gone. But inconclusive. All right, so now to a very unlikely place. I don't know if you have Googled me or seen this, but there's one piece that I'm sort of very known for in the world of Google. But in the 1999, 2000, I was invited by a public arts organization in New York to propose a public art sculpture that responded in some way to two things. One, the millennium. Two, venture, they were just about to map the human chromosome. So that was about to happen, right around 2000, and it did. I had a friend, we worked together on a number of things. We decided to do a public art project together, because often these projects are very kind of unwieldy and lots of meetings. And so we just thought it'd be good to do it together. So we said, hey, let's make a beacon of some bioluminescent organism and put it on top of, I don't know, a big building so people can see it in New York. So why not the biggest building? Why not the World Trade Center? So we proposed putting it on the radio mast, World Trade Center 1, and it was going to be an amplified version of a live colony. So people on the street, when looking up, could say, that is a living light instead of being given up. And we were thinking lots of metaphors, but one was sort of remapping King Kong for sort of the genetic age because of its relation, but also instead of having a huge monster, it'd be this sort of small thing. To this end, then, we got a studio in the World Trade Center. There is this sort of arts organization that has this space. So we were in that space, and we started culturing a number of different types of these organisms. So here's some different colonies of flagellates there who are messing with their circadian cycle or how, when they eliminate, when they don't. And then doing a ton of different light tests. We were on the 91st floor, so we would go to New Jersey and Brooklyn and Staten Island and just everywhere, uptown, downtown, to see how bright it needed to be, how much amplification it needed to be able to see it from a number of different places. Right? And another thing that was great about this studio was we were able to bring a lot of people from the press and other sort of art collectors to get funding for it. Right? So we had done our research, we had made sort of the models, and we were about to build it. So this was sort of a little diagram of what it was, where it was. But then, these were some of the sites that we were looking at that have kind of information kiosks, so you'd be able to see it from Museum of Natural History, Ellis Island, and other places. But then September 11th, one artist who was there, his name is Michael Richards, actually slept over that night. Every time I mention this, every time I think about this, I really hope that he didn't wake up, because I think pretty much the plane hit right around that area. We weren't there. I was in Brooklyn, my friend was in Chelsea, but basically the New York Times was just going crazy, as was everyone in New York, looking for all these stories, But the magazine, the New York Times magazine, was on a different schedule, because that was a Tuesday, and they were like, what are we going to do with the Sunday magazine, because we already have it, and I don't know, it's on some other subject, whatever subject it was, kind of pre-September 11th. They said we got to have a new magazine, and one of the editors there said, why don't we ask some artists for a response? Because we have no idea what we could possibly do. So one of the editors knew that we were there because they had come to one of the press previews. And they tried to find us. They found through the organization that was sponsoring it that we were alive. And then they proposed this idea, like, well, you have some kind of response. So immediately, we did have a response. Because that night, there was this horrific cloud at ground zero that was being illuminated by movie lights, because basically it was a rescue effort, and they all the rescues of people had called around and said, we need light down here. So there's all these very professional crews that work on film, so they brought their huge sort of lights down and they pointed at the pit, looking for survivors. But I was in Brooklyn on the promenade, so you can see the whole thing, And that was the most horrific, huge, illuminated, sort of ghastly white cloud. But here's the weird phenomena, which was the phantom limb phenomenon. Julian and I saw the towers. I mean, they were there. We knew them. They were inscribed sort of in our imagination and mind. We knew that they were there, but they're not there. You know, they're like, what is going on? The perceptual weirdness. So we took some pictures and we resculpted it and made this picture in the computer. Okay. So ultimately, the New York Times, that was the Sunday magazine. So they put that up there. So when we saw that too, I mean, everyone is trying to figure it out. But when we saw that, it was like kind of a hallucination that was made manifest. I talk about it as almost like being a midwife to this image. But then we heard about some other people that had talked about the image. And then we started thinking like, wow, maybe we could make that as an actual installation rather than an image. So for the next 6 months, we sort of very quietly organized sort of a team and looked into the possibility of doing it. So we also made a lot of other images. One, and this is sort of the experiment thing, we wanted to know what it would look like from other places. So we kind of retraced steps where we had already been looking at it for the other project. And then we made a number of these images, and they were also used to convince, or not to convince, but to show people what it might look like and to talk about our plans. And with the organization, we were also able to get a lot of feedback whether or not, what people thought.